Good morning, I'm Tom at Ledgemere Heritage Farm here in southern Maine. One thing I have been hesitant to talk about, I usually try to keep my videos light and upbeat, and I've known about it for over a month, and I'm just trying to figure out how to actually convey, but the bird flu is back. I'm always hesitant to talk about things like this because I don't want to spread fear or everybody loves a good conspiracy theory, but I'm definitely not a proponent of spreading fear amongst people. So let's just take this at face value, and we'll talk about things that I know, that I've witnessed, and that are reasonable. While I don't know a lot about the scientific aspects of how they name it, I have been in contact with the USDA and the local cooperative extension office here in York County. One of the first things I did here when I started my farm was to register it with the U.S. Department of Agriculture. But one of the advantages of registering with the NRCS, which is a division of the USDA, but they're separate as far as what I'm talking about right now, is that you are always updated when anything that is worthwhile is out and about that you should be cognizant of. And one of those has been the return of the bird flu. At first I was seeing it out in like Minnesota, the land of 10,000 lakes, which made sense because they have so much water, and the bird flu is primarily transmitted by migratory birds. So essentially all the migratory birds can be carriers of the bird flu. Primarily it's transmitted or carried by geese, ducks, and shorebirds. But then I started seeing emails and information about it actually happening here in Maine. And there's been a number of flocks affected, ranging from size of 3 birds to over 200. With one of the most recent cases being the next town over, so we're talking less than 12 miles away at this point. I generally take biosecurity pretty seriously. One thing I try not to do is, actually I don't allow visitors on the farm, period. I don't have people out there visiting livestock. It's not a petting zoo. It's what I call a working farm. And limiting all the traffic is one of the best ways to mitigate the spread of disease amongst the livestock, particularly, you know, if you have a flock of birds that are contaminated and then you come over here with your shoes, come to my flock, there you've transmitted the disease. One of the common ways of it being transmitted is through the use of shared lawn and garden equipment or poultry equipment, and it seems like poultry equipment would be a no-brainer, but lawn and garden equipment, you've got, say, a lawn tractor or some implement that's being shared and you use it on your property, and it goes over to your neighbor's property, and now their soil is contaminated. And the bird flu can live, the H5N2 can live in manure for 100 days. Now the USDA has a whole website full of information, how-tos, checklists, etc. And I'm just going to kind of give you a brief overview of some of those things. So first of all, limit traffic, human traffic. That seems like a no-brainer. If you have birds, don't wear your shoes into mine. If you do, you put the booties on or whatever, and then you dispose of them on the way out. That's perfectly reasonable. That makes perfect sense. Exclude wildlife. Well, that also makes sense because you don't want to be giving free lunches to rodents and migratory birds, insects, etc. You want to not have grain spilled all over the place, and the biggest culprit is obviously feed. And let's face it, feed is expensive, so we want to be very cautious of our feed. We want to keep it in good containers, don't overfeed your birds, and clean up any spills as they occur. So a little excerpt I got from the email was, since March 17th, USDA labs confirmed highly pathogenic avian influenza in samples taken from flocks of non-commercial backyard birds in Lincoln, Knox, York, Cumberland, and Washington counties. The properties have been under quarantine and humane depopulation efforts have been completed. What's a humane depopulation? My understanding is that they gas them. So one of the second biggest things that you can do, because the HPA1 risk remains high to both backyard and commercial operators, poultry should be kept indoors to prevent the spread of the disease. And that could also include a covered shelter. So if you've got a run with a roof over it, because the biggest way that the disease is spread is through mucus and feces. Generally the bird flu starts in September as the birds are migrating one way, and it kind of peaks around February, and then it declines through the summer because the ultraviolet rays and the heat will kill the virus. One thing they mentioned that I kind of agree with is to only purchase from reputable sources, and they say the NPIP, which is a National Poultry Improvement Plan, certified farms, and that makes sense, I guess, but there's a lot of people, myself included, who occasionally have a surplus of birds, and this is where I say know your farmer, okay? Because if you know the farmer and you've done business with them before, you have a trust relationship, then I think it's okay to buy animals from them. You've met the farmer, you know what they're doing, and I'm pretty transparent here about what's happening. So I think that falls into a reputable source. Craigslist, showing up at somebody's house with a cardboard box, buyer beware, right? Because a lot of people who buy poultry, they don't know the signs of disease, they don't know how to tell the age of a bird, and we'll do a separate video on guessing the age of a bird, because I've seen a lot of people get swindled on buying old birds that were pretty much played out and paying a lot of money for them, but that's a whole side entity, and I don't want to talk about that at the moment. So when you go to the USDA's website, they have a checklist for purchasing poultry, and I've already covered about where to obtain the birds from. And so to confirm the poultry you purchase tested clean, that's really difficult to do. But one thing I can tell you is that the bird flu strikes quickly, and you could have a perfectly normal flock in the morning and then go back out in the afternoon and they're all dead. Well, that's how fast it works. And it's not uncommon to have a bird just drop dead every once in a while. I had one drop dead a couple weeks ago, and I didn't see anything obviously wrong with it. It wasn't egg bound. Sometimes they just stroke out or have a heart attack, and that's it. It's part of the business. When you get concerned is when you start to have, huge losses. You start to see the birds becoming lethargic. You'll see swelling around the eyes, the wattles. They start to walk funny. They lay less eggs. The shells are thin. There's a lot of signs that a reasonable person can see from their animals that something's not right. And at that point, you can call the veterinarian, which is a good idea. If you've got something that's super weird going on. I don't really recommend going on Facebook and asking around the groups, because unless this is one thing I'm very adamant about, is unless you have the suffix DVM after your name, I don't think you're qualified to go on Facebook and start giving veterinary advice. But that's just me, and there are bird veterinarians, and I know it's expensive. But if you do notice that your flock, you have a lot of dead animals, then you can call first the veterinarian, or you can call your cooperative extension office, or you can call the USDA. So when you buy birds, don't buy birds that look unhealthy. And when you do bring birds home, you want to this has been common practice for years. Is when you buy any animal, whether it be a sheep, a goat, a cow, chickens, you want to kind of quarantine them for at least a couple weeks, up to 30 days or so, just to make sure that there's nothing obviously wrong with them. You don't want to take somebody else's farm problems and give them to your animals. And when you transport animals, you want to make sure that your boxes, your chicken crates, etc., have been disinfected, because you don't want to take your dirty chicken crate to somebody's house and start loading birds in it. You've already brought the stuff over, and you're touching it, and you're touching birds. It's just a recipe for disaster. So one thing I do with my stuff is I always disinfect it, and it's just chlorine, bleach, and some water, spray it down and wipe it off, let the sun dry it. That's a perfectly acceptable way to sanitize your equipment. And wear site-specific clothing. So if I'm going to go to somebody's house and buy birds, I either want to disinfect my shoes, my clothing, etc. Don't wear the same boots and clothes I was in my chicken coop with to somebody else's house when I'm picking up birds. That's just a methods that gives the virus a vehicle for transport. And this is just common sense, folks. It doesn't mean necessarily talking about the bird flu. It's all kinds of different things that can affect your livestock. And so again, quarantine your new additions for 30 days. Check for sneezing, coughing, nasal discharge, swollen eyes. Check for mites, lice, and other health issues daily. And I want to be very clear that chicken lice is not transmittable to humans. It's not the same thing. And there's chicken dust you can use. There's poultry dust. All those different things that can rid your problem of mites and lice pretty quickly. But dust baths, you know, a good clean shavings in your chicken coop. Chickens will fluff themselves up in it, and that's how they get rid of a lot of critters that are hitching a ride on them. And then another thing that's just common sense is to prevent bullying. Don't add young birds to the current flock until they're roughly the same size. You'll get a big bird that's aggressive towards a small one. Next thing you know, their brains are exposed. It happens that fast. Report sick birds to your State Department of Agriculture Extension Office, your vet, or the USDA at 866-536-7593. And one of the important takeaways is that no cases of this strain of flu have been detected in humans. It's low risk to public health. Poultry and eggs that are safely handled are safe to eat. And so this is one of my other pet peeves, and I know that unwashed eggs keep longer. I understand that. However, the state of Maine, if you're selling eggs roadside or anywhere else, requires that your eggs be washed, and that's to prevent salmonella, because you get the manure on the eggs. People are touching the manured egg, cracking it into a bowl. There's just a really big vehicle, a big opportunity there for salmonella to get into your food. And cooking your food thoroughly should get rid of salmonella, but I like my eggs over easy, so there you go. Should I worry about buying eggs at the store? Absolutely not. The birds that are affected by the flu, they don't lay the eggs, and if for some reason they get through, once you cook the egg, like I just mentioned, it kills the virus. And the USDA does humanely depopulate the flocks. So unfortunately, with the widespread of this virus, some places they've limited or halted the sale of live birds completely. You know, trade shows or auctions where they sell poultry. I've heard some of those places are temporarily discontinuing the sale of poultry, and you can sell what you've got in existence, but you can't like replace it with more stuff. And so here I do this every year just for a few eggs, just because it's kind of fun, as I throw a dozen or two in the incubators, and that's a way to replenish some of your stock at least. And as far as I know, none of the hatcheries have reported huge losses. I know Murray McMurray did have some losses with their farm, but they already had eggs in incubation, so the replacements are coming. It's just going to take a little bit of time. You know, it takes 28 days for eggs to hatch. But as far as the other big hatcheries, I haven't heard anything, and a lot of the problems are in the big commercial poultry farms. And so one of the questions people say is, well, these big commercial poultry farms, the animals are all inside. How does that happen? And again, my best guess is that it's the equipment isn't thoroughly cleaned. Somehow it's in the manure. The food's contaminated. There's a lot of reasons that could make that hold true. But anyway, I hope this video has been a little bit helpful to you. And again, no scare tactics, no conspiracy theories. There's a conspiracy theory about everything. You know, I was the second gunman on a grassy knoll. But just use common practices for keeping your flocks safe, keeping all your animals safe. These are not new practices. These are practices that have been well established and have worked for years. And so I encourage you to keep your stuff clean. Don't transmit or transport things and dirty stuff. Clean your stuff. Stay away from other people's birds if you can help it. Report any huge losses of your animals, because that's a giveaway. If your whole flock dies, something's obviously wrong. But again, you know, a bird here and there dying, I usually lose one or two a year probably that just keel over and die. And my guess is they had a stroke or a heart attack and they just croaked. But thank you for watching, and I hope you all have a great day.